My family asked me to let it go. My brother had just used my bakery's name, my logo, and 8 years of my reputation to collect deposits from strangers. And my parents sat across from me at their kitchen table and said, "He didn't mean any harm." That was the moment I understood that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones you need protection from. I need to back up. I opened Clover Crumb when I was 26. I had $14,000 saved, most of it from working double shifts at a hotel kitchen in Asheville for 4 years, a rented space on a corner in West Greenville, South Carolina, and absolutely no safety net. My husband worked nights then. We ate a lot of pasta. I cried in the parking lot more times than I can count, usually on Sunday evenings when I was doing the week's books and the numbers didn't add up the way I'd hoped. But it worked, slowly, then all at once, the way those things do. By the time I was 30, Clover Crumb had a second location in Spartanburg, a wholesale account with 2 local grocery chains, and a name that people in the Upstate actually recognized. I had a trademark. I had a staff of 11. I had health insurance for the first time in my adult life, which I know sounds like a small thing but felt enormous. My brother, I'll call him my brother because that's what he is even now, is 4 years older than me. He's always had ideas. Big ones. Loud ones. The kind that fill a room and sound incredible for about 6 weeks before something goes sideways and he needs a new plan. He'd done real estate, e-commerce, a food truck that lasted 1 summer. None of it bad because he was stupid. He's not. He just doesn't want to do the part that comes after the idea, the grinding, unglamorous part where you actually build something. He called me in January, on a Tuesday morning while I was doing inventory at the Spartanburg location. I almost didn't pick up. I should have trusted that instinct. "I've been thinking," he said, which is always how it starts. "You've got something real with the bakery. People trust that name. I want to partner with you." I asked him what he meant by partner. He meant he wanted to open a 3rd location, in Charlotte, under my brand, with my recipes. He would run it. I would supply the name, the branding, the training, and here's the part where I had to set down my clipboard. Some startup capital, just to get rolling. I said no. I said it nicely the first time. I explained that expanding to Charlotte wasn't something I was ready for financially, that I wasn't in a position to take on a partner without a serious legal framework, and that I'd worked too hard on the brand to hand over control of how it was represented in a new market. He said he understood. We talked for another few minutes about nothing, how Mom's knee was doing, whether Dad had sold his truck yet, and then we hung up and I went back to my inventory and thought, okay, that's done. It wasn't done. I found out what was actually happening 6 weeks later from a Google review. A woman named Diane, she tagged the Clover Crumb name in a 1-star review, wrote that she had paid a $200 deposit for a custom wedding cake from our Charlotte branch, and that nobody was returning her calls. She wanted her money back. She said the website looked professional and she'd had no reason not to trust it. I stared at my phone for a full minute before I understood what I was reading. There was no Charlotte branch. There was no Charlotte website. There was no Charlotte anything, not from me. I went to the URL she'd mentioned in the review. It was a real site. My logo, my fonts, my color palette. Photos that were either stolen from my actual Instagram or taken at my real locations without my knowledge. There was a contact form, a deposit button linked to a Venmo account, and a fake address in the no-day neighborhood in Charlotte. My brother had built a fake Clover Crumb and was collecting money from people. I called him immediately. He picked up on the second ring, which told me he wasn't expecting what was coming. "What is that website?" I said. There was a pause. Then I was going to tell you. Tell me what? I figured if I got it going, proved the concept, you'd see it could work. I've already got 4 orders. 2 wedding cakes, a corporate account, a quinceañera. You're taking deposits. It's just to cover early costs. With my name, with my logo, without my permission. He started talking about how I was being rigid, how family businesses work through these things, how he wasn't hurting me, he was building on what I'd already built. His voice had that particular quality it gets when he knows he's wrong but has decided to push through anyway, a kind of forced reasonableness that makes my skin crawl. I told him to take the site down by the end of the day. He said he'd think about it. I hung up and called my trademark attorney. Here is where I want to be honest about something, because if you've ever been in a situation like this, you probably know the specific hell of being told to slow down by the one person you're paying to help you move fast. My attorney, who is excellent, which is why I'm still working with her, told me not to send a cease and desist yet. She wanted to document first. She wanted screenshots, a record of the deposits being taken, evidence of customer harm. She said if we moved too early, we might spook him into deleting everything before we had enough. I hated that advice. I understood it. I followed it. I spent 2 weeks watching. I set up a Google alert for the fake site. I created a separate email address and submitted a fake inquiry through the contact form, just to see what would happen. He responded within an hour, professional sounding, cheerful. He quoted me a price for a custom birthday cake and sent me a payment link. My brother, quoting prices, the capes, using my name. I forwarded everything to my attorney. Meanwhile, Diane's review had gotten a response from the fake account, someone claiming to be Clover Crumb customer service, saying her order was on schedule and asking her to be patient. She replied publicly that she still hadn't received a call back and was considering disputing the charge with her bank. I replied from my real account. I told her I was the actual owner of Clover Crumb, that the Charlotte site was not affiliated with my business in any way, that I was deeply sorry this had happened to her, and that she should absolutely dispute the charge. I gave her my direct phone number. She called within 10 minutes. She was furious, and she had every right to be. She'd paid $200 for a deposit on a $600 cake for her daughter's wedding. She'd believed she was supporting a local small business with a good reputation, and some man she'd never met had taken her money and given her nothing. I told her I would personally refund her deposit, out of my own pocket. It wasn't my legal obligation. It really, truly wasn't. But it was the right thing to do, and also I needed her to trust me enough to document everything she had from the transaction in case we needed it later. She emailed me every screenshot she had, including an email from Clover Crumb Charlotte that included my brother's personal email address in the reply to field. My attorney said, now we move. The cease and desist went out on a Thursday afternoon. By Friday morning my brother had called my mother. By Friday evening my parents had called me. I want to describe that phone call as accurately as I can, because it was one of the most disorienting experiences of my life. My mother led with, he's really struggling right now. I said, I know, he's been struggling for a long time. That's not what we're talking about. She said that I needed to understand that he hadn't meant it maliciously, that he genuinely thought I would eventually come around, that he'd built something real and was just trying to get started. I said, Mom, he took $200 from a woman for a wedding cake that doesn't exist. There are other customers too. He collected deposits from at least 4 people. She said, well, how much total are we talking about? I almost laughed. I said, it's not about the total. It's about the fact that he used my trademark without permission to defraud people. My dad got on the line then. He's quieter than my mum, usually the one who listens more than he talks. He said, can't you two just work something out? Do it the right way going forward. He clearly has some drive here. I said, Dad, I already said no. He did it anyway. I can't reward that. My dad said, he's your brother. And I said, I know, and this is my business. That was the end of that conversation. My brother took the site down 2 days after the cease and desist, not immediately, which I noted, and called me to tell me he had. He did not apologize. He said he was complying, and that he hoped I was happy now. I did not reply. What I did instead was send my attorney everything, the screenshots, the fake website archive, we'd had it cached before he took it down, the customer emails, the Venmo transaction records that Diane had pulled from her bank, a second customer, A woman who paid a deposit for corporate breakfast trays had also contacted me after seeing Diane's review, and she provided her records too. My attorney filed for trademark infringement. We also had a solid case for fraud, though that was a matter for the state to pursue, not us directly. She explained the difference clearly, which I appreciated, because I needed to understand what I was actually doing and why. My parents did not speak to me for 3 weeks. My brother told extended family that I was suing him over a misunderstanding. My aunt, my mum's younger sister, who I've always been close to, texted me to say she hoped I would consider what this was doing to the family. I texted back, I hope he considers what he did to those customers. She didn't reply. There was a period in there, I'd say about 2 weeks in the middle of all this, where I genuinely questioned whether I was being too hard. I sat in my car in the parking lot of the Greenville location one evening after everyone had gone home, and I just sat there, not crying, not thinking clearly, just existing in that particular fog that comes when you're doing the right thing, and it still feels terrible. I called my best friend, who has known me since we were 15. She listened to the whole thing start to finish, and then she said, "Would you let a stranger do this to you?" I said no. She said, "So why would you let your brother?" I don't know why that was the thing that cut through, but it did. I went back inside and finished the inventory I'd been avoiding. The legal process was not fast. I want to be clear about that because stories like this tend to skip over the months of paperwork and waiting and emails from your attorney that say still in discovery and cost money every time they land in your inbox. It took 7 months from the cease and desist to a resolution. What happened, in plain terms, my brother did not have a lawyer who could meaningfully contest the trademark claim. The evidence was overwhelming. We had the archive site, the customer deposits, the email records, the reply to field with his personal address. His attorney made a few motions that went nowhere. He settled. He paid restitution to the 4 customers who had filed complaints, totaling $1,100 in deposits, plus my legal fees, which were significant. He signed a permanent agreement never to use Clover and Crumb, any variation of the name, my logo, my recipes, or any branding associated with my business in any commercial capacity, forever. He also received a referral to the Greenville County District Attorney's Office because my attorney, as required by professional standards, had reported the fraudulent deposit collection. I don't know what came of that. That part of it is not my story to tell, or my process to control. I did not feel triumphant when it was over. I want to say that clearly because I think people expect you to feel vindicated when the right thing happens legally. Mostly, I just felt tired. I felt the absence of something I'd been holding on to without realizing it. The idea that my brother and I were okay, that the distance between us was about circumstance and not character. I also felt grateful in a quiet way for the people who had trusted my brand. Diane sent me a card after I refunded her deposit, handwritten, with a little drawing of a cupcake in the corner. She said she'd come into the Greenville location to say thank you in person, but had missed me, so she left the card with one of my staff. It's on my bulletin board in the back office. My parents and I talk now. It took time. My mother eventually said, not quite an apology, but something close to one, that she hadn't understood the full picture when she'd asked me to let it go. My dad brought me coffee and sat at my kitchen table one afternoon and didn't say much of anything, just sat there, which for him is its own kind of sorry. My brother and I have not spoken since the settlement. I don't know if we will. What I know is this: I built something. I built it with my hands and my savings, and years of Sundays I spent working instead of resting. It has my name on it, literally and legally. And it means something to people beyond my family. The woman who sends me a Christmas card every year because we made her mother's 80th birthday cake. The high school kid who applied to work for me because he wants to own a restaurant someday and thought this was a good place to learn. The older couple who come in every Saturday morning and order the same thing and have for 3 years. Those people are why I protected it. Not pride, not stubbornness, not because I wanted to win something. Because some things are worth protecting, even when it costs you. Especially when it costs you. There's a card on my bulletin board in the back office at the Greenville location. Diane drew a little cupcake in the corner. She didn't have to send it. She'd already gotten her money back, but she did. And sometimes when I'm closing up alone and the day has been long and the numbers are fine, but my chest still feels heavy, I look at that card and it reminds me why I didn't let it go. I thought a lot about what my brother actually believed when he built that site. I don't think he thought of himself as a thief. That's the strange part. I think he genuinely believed that because we shared a last name and a childhood, some portion of what I built belonged to him by proximity. That's not malice. It's something almost worse. It's the quiet assumption that someone else's decade of sacrifice is a resource you can borrow when your own plans fall apart. And the hard truth I've had to sit with is that I almost let him. Not because I was weak, but because I loved him. Because some part of me kept waiting for the version of my brother who would see what he'd done and feel actual remorse. That version didn't show up. What showed up instead was a phone call from my mother asking me to consider his feelings. What I know now, and I mean know it in my body, not just in my head, is that protecting something you built is not the same as being cruel. For a long time, those two things felt tangled together, especially when the people telling me I was being cruel were the ones I trusted most. But cruelty would have been building something fake and letting strangers pay for it. Cruelty was collecting $200 from a woman planning her daughter's wedding and never intending to make the cake. I didn't do that. He did. And understanding that distinction clearly without softening it to make family dinners easier was maybe the hardest piece of clear thinking I've ever had to do. The months between the cease and desist and the settlement taught me something about patience that I hadn't learned in 8 years of running a business. My attorney was right to slow me down. Acting fast would have felt satisfying and cost me the case. Sitting with the discomfort, documenting everything, waiting, that was the harder and smarter path. There's a kind of discipline in that. Not passive, not resigned, just clear-eyed about what actually works versus what just feels like action. And then there's the part that doesn't get easier with time, which is this. I showed up anyway. Every morning. I opened the cases and turned on the ovens and managed the staff and answered customer emails and did all of it while this was happening in the background. Not because I'm exceptional, because the business was real and it needed me, and so did the 11 people whose paychecks depended on it running. That's the thing about building something from scratch. It doesn't wait for your personal life to settle down. It asks you to show up regardless. And the only way you learn to do that is by doing it once, when everything is hard, and then again, until it becomes the kind of person you are without having to decide to be it. I am still that person. My bakery is still open. Diane came in last spring and ordered a birthday cake for herself. She hugged me when she picked it up. That felt like enough.